So today's Real Talk was a bit of a hodgepodge of topics. I did retouch base with our students, so to go back again and clarify when it comes to adults or babies attaining heaven, the necessity of supernatural grace in our lives, and that we by ourselves do not naturally have this supernatural grace due to original sin, but with Jesus Christ, with faith in Jesus Christ, with baptism, we can have that. You know, the Eucharist, reconciliation, these supernatural sacraments are these means of God's grace in our lives. Those are very necessary. Now there are some ways, you know, we know many Christians who are not Catholic who are baptized, and that is a way that they can receive this infusion of supernatural grace. But when we talk about some other religions and things like that, okay, so how, you know, I kind of challenge the students, okay, if someone isn't baptized, you know, if they're not following this path of faith, of baptism, how does someone attain heaven? I challenge them to think about that, you know, as we encounter different people in our lives. But I think that points to the necessity of telling them about Jesus Christ. I think when we think in our heads that all people are saved and that God, and now hear me, that God does desire the salvation of all men, that is true. But he's not going to force salvation on anybody. God has saved you without you, but he will not save you without you. There's a necessity of us to respond to the grace of God. So challenge. I think it puts us on mission when we realize our state as humans, as not having what it takes to get to heaven. We need to tell people about grace, about God, about Jesus, about what he's done. If we think everyone goes to heaven, it kind of gives us a pass. Like, well, I'm sure God will save him somehow. But you're the one that he's put in front of this person right now, and you know the truth. You need to tell him. When we get to unbaptized babies too, and similarly with this sanctifying grace thing, I reviewed that with them in the three different ways we had talked about previously on a video about that the Catholic Church puts forth as possibilities. One would be because of our nature, lacking sanctifying grace, we would go to hell if we're an unbaptized baby. Again, I think that one would be. I don't think that many would hold to that. Although it's a possibility, I don't think anyone would hold to it. The other would be all babies go to heaven. And I can see why God would desire that. They're cute little babies, and I think that they're fantastic as well. However, they still do have original sin on their soul, and they do not have that sanctifying grace that we know is necessary for salvation. So I did, again, tell them about that middle way, where they would experience a limbo of the children, which is a natural state of goodness, but they would not be able to attain heaven due to the lack of sanctifying grace. For me, this one makes sense. It seems good, you know, it seems better, but it just doesn't make logical sense. This one doesn't seem good at all. The middle one seems to make logical sense, although it's not exactly what I would hope. You know, it does seem to make logical sense. Not that God can't do whatever he wants to, because he definitely can. But this did kind of spiral off into a how we spend our Sundays conversation. And we had some students that just kind of relayed what they do on a typical Sunday. We had our students that wake up at 7:30 and they go to Mass, and then they go on with their day. Even though they don't really hang out with a lot of people, they spend a lot of family time doing chores and things like that. And we did have our students who said that they wake up at 11 o'clock, they eat breakfast at 12, and they hang around the house till noon, and then they get on their phone and they don't go to church at all. And we didn't really get into it, but we just kind of talked about it, and I did say some things at the end, but we weren't able to get into it at the exact depth that I wanted to. And I'm not sure if our students are ready to hear it, you know, about how serious it is to attend Mass. Like how serious it is to keep the Sabbath holy. And really when it comes to the first and third commandment of you shall have no other gods before me, and remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, like those are the two of the first three commandments of God, not suggestions, but that we spend our Sundays in worship of God, that we put no other things in front of God. So I was actually challenged in class. They said, okay, Adam, if and I put it forth what it was, and they kind of worked on it a little bit, but I said, okay, if LeBron James asks me on Christmas Day to fly out to Los Angeles and go to the Clippers-Lakers game or whatever, and I can't go to Mass that day, I am not going to Los Angeles. I will choose Jesus Christ every time. And I told these students, that like, it happens all the time in our lives, especially on Sundays. You know, we try to rationalize these things. It's a microcosm of our bigger lives. Every single time, every single decision you make is a decision between something and Jesus Christ, and we have to choose the Jesus Christ. You have to every time. I even had a kid that said, like, you know, if I choose between my mom and Jesus, I'm choosing my mom every time. And I'm like, no, you can't. Your mom cannot save you. Jesus can save you. This is the creator we're talking about. You're choosing the created, as good as your mom is. As much as you love your mom, please. But she's a creation. She's a creation. She isn't the creator. He could make 1,000,000 of your moms. You need to choose the creator. I get where he's coming from, though, because he loves his mom. Praise God. That's a great thing. I think that mom would be glad to hear that. But the reality is, we need to make these drastic decisions in our lives where we need to be able to tell our children that when it comes to choosing you over God, I'll never do it. I will choose God every time. That's the devotion that we need in that first commandment. Not only with our activities that we do on Sunday where we put off God and say like, oh, well, we don't work our day around Mass. We work Mass around our day. Some other kids would say like, well, we do all these things, and if we have enough time at the end, if we're not doing anything else, then we'll go to Mass. That's backwards. And I think we know that. I mean, we know that, but in America, we've really lost sight of that. You know, I mean, I was never alive to see it. I mean, I grew up in Kansas where you couldn't buy alcohol on Sundays, and that was one thing that I saw. But I mean, how many times do we hear about the 40s and 50s where nobody did anything on Sundays? It was just a total day of rest. Man, that's not what we do these days. And we're worn out because of it, you know? We're worn out because of it. We run around, and I only have a 9-year-old that really does sports, and sometimes I get worn out from the sports that we do, you know? I can't imagine having an 8th grader who's involved in all these different tournaments, and you get done with your weekend, and you're behind on chores, you're behind on all these things around the house, you haven't rested at all, and back to work on Monday. What are we doing to ourselves? And what are we teaching our kids? You know, for myself, you know, this was convicting to me. I'm my son's flag football coach, and we had our game got canceled on Saturday, so we had it on Sunday, and we had some kids that were Mormon on our team, and they didn't show up because it was Sunday, and they viewed sports as not keeping the Sabbath holy. Now, I mean, many of us might be able to rationalize as why sports is an okay thing to do. It's recreation. It's, you know, we're relaxing and having fun, but there comes a line where it's not. And, you know, we did play the game. You know, we played. But I was kind of convicted a little bit. I was like, dang, look at these guys, man. You know, they're not Catholic, but are they keeping that Sabbath holier than I am? Many would argue yes. So, I mean, you're the biggest influence in your kids' lives, and they see what you do, and like you're sowing the seeds of their future lives right now when you choose to say, yes, we are going to Mass today. I know we're in Alaska right now playing a volleyball tournament. But I'm sure they have churches in Alaska, and we're going to go to church before we play this game right now. Or I think when you make that stand, your kids see, they can come off and say, my wife says it all the time. She thinks that she has missed Mass one time in her life, but many times they would be going to a softball tournament and they would go to Mass. And you hear about that from kids. You know, you hear kids say, yeah, but me and my dad went to Mass and nobody else did. You know, even for Catholic schools, you know, there's Catholic schools around town that'll go to different events, and all their kids will miss Mass, and they're on a Catholic school event. It seems weird. Doesn't make any sense. So, hodgepodge today. Feel free to dive into these conversations with your kids. I encourage it. That's why I make these videos, so you guys know what we're talking about, so you can do your job as the primary catechist and get in there and have these good conversations and have a little bit of primer to talk about them with. So, thank you guys, and we'll hopefully see you in a week.